Hey everyone, how's it going? Thanks for checking out the channel. My name is Forrest, and thanks for tuning in to the fifth installment of my complete analysis of all 389 Bach chorales. The chorale we're going to be looking at today is on Wasserflüssen, Babylon, which means at the rivers of Babylon. This one is the longest chorale that we've looked at today, so I don't want to tarry too long, and we should just get right into it. So the first thing that is becoming like a tradition, or really it's just the first thing I do when I analyze tonal music, is I look for the key. So we have a G major triad at the beginning, a G major triad at the end, and one sharp in the key signature. I think it's safe to say that we're in the key of G major. We start with, like I said, a G major triad, so that's just a one chord. C, C, G, E, that's a C major triad, a four chord. Passing tone in the tenor, D, A, F sharp, D. It's a D major triad or a five chord. Passing tone, that C could be considered a seventh. E, E, G, B. That is an E minor triad or a six chord. Another passing tone in the soprano to an F sharp, A, F sharp, D. That is a five chord in first inversion. Passing tones in the lower voices, A, C, E, C. It's a two chord in root position. We have kind of a suspension getting prepared here, a neighbor tone in the upper voice or in the soprano, and then we have an E here, that's a chord tone, so we don't need to analyze that. And then we have D, D, A, and then F sharp. That's a five chord, and it goes to a G chord, a one chord at the cadence, and this is an imperfect authentic cadence, because it's an authentic cadence because it's a dominant to tonic, but the soprano doesn't have the tonic in it, so it's imperfect authentic. F sharp, D, A, and the fifth is doubled here. Bach likes to double the fifth in his first inversion triads, apparently. That is a 5-6 chord, fifth D major triad in first inversion. We then have a G, D, G, B, that is a one chord, and then we have passing tone in the bass. Then we have E, G, E, C. That's a C major triad in first inversion. Passing tone in the tenor. B, B, G, D. That's a G major triad in first inversion. Again, not a non-chord tone here. It's a G, it's part of the triad. And then we have C, E, G, C. That is a passing tone, but this is a four chord, a C major triad. And I think this whole section right here is just a big, like an elaborate suspension. He has some interesting counterpoint going on here. Sorry about the noisy cars behind me. This is a five chord, passing tone, 4-3 suspension stuff going on here. The seventh gets introduced here, and then we have a G major triad at the end. It's a perfect authentic cadence. Okay, next, another one chord. Here we have F sharp, A, D, A. Again, first inversion, D major triad where the fifth is doubled, passing tone in the alto. Then we have E, D, F sharp, B. I think this E is an accented non-chord tone. I think it's instead a 3-6 chord because this D would complete the triad. Then we have E, G, E, C. That's a four chord in first inversion. C major triad over E, passing tone in the soprano, F sharp, A, D, A. Remember, this is just a suspension, creating a 7 over the D, which resolves to a sixth. It's a 5-6 chord, so we have 3, 4, 5, and 5 usually goes to 1, especially when the F sharp is in the bass. And then we go to G, D, B, with like a 2-1 suspension below it, so that's just a one chord. Then we have D, F sharp, C, A, that's a 5-7 chord in root position. And then we have G, G, B, G. Another perfect authentic cadence in the key of G major right here. C, G, E, C. It's a four chord, passing tone in the soprano. G, D, B. Another one chord. Actually, I would be tempted to call that a one chord, but we get a passing tone, not an F sharp, but an F natural. So I think this is actually functioning as a dominant, like a 5-7 of 4. And if I'm right, a C major triad will be after the fact. E, G, E, C. Yeah, that's a 4 chord right there. So he's tonicized C major. And look, we get another F here. This would be an accented non-chord tone because D, G, F, B. That would be a 5, 6 of 4, which goes to C, G, E, E. Another root position triad where he doubles the third. That's interesting. You know, I don't think he modulates to C major here, even though he keeps C emphasized for a while, because he doesn't really cadence in C major. It's all very quick. I think this is just a section where C major is being honored, not really. It's not the new key. F sharp gets introduced in the same measure again. But then again, maybe you can make an argument for it. E, G, G, B. That is an E minor triad in root position. We have some non-chord tones. A, G, C sharp. That is an A7 chord, which would be 5, 7 of 5. And then D, A, F sharp, D. It's a D major triad. In other words, a half cadence in the key of G major. Now, maybe there's an argument to be made that the G major, or that we've modulated to the key of D major here, but I think this cadence sounds more like a half cadence than anything else. We immediately go to a G major triad afterwards too in root positions, so I think we're still in the key of G here. We got some passing tones in the outer voices rather. So we go from G to G again, just a lot of counterpoint but staying on the triad. We have a C major triad, or 4 chord, passing tone in the tenor, F sharp, A, D, another first inversion triad where the 5th is doubled, that's interesting, passing tone in the soprano, G sharp, E, B. We have a 5, 6 of 2 in E major triad, that's A minor's dominant. I think we're modulating to A minor here because we have a cadence on E major here and a cadence on A minor here. So I think this is the start of a longer phrase or multiple phrases in the key of A minor. So let's see how that pans out. So we immediately go to A minor after the fact with this sort of double accented passing, like a double neighbor tone, but they're accented, which is kind of interesting. Bass leaps down. And then we have a half cadence in the key of A minor, which is a 5 chord. Then we get G sharp, E, that could be considered the 7th, B, and E. That's just we don't need to reanalyze the Roman numeral, but we can change the figured bass. A, C, A, E. That's just a 1 chord. Passing tones in the outer voices, in the lower voices. I'm confusing my terms here. C, A, E, E. Again, a first inversion triad. We don't need to reanalyze the Roman numeral, but the 5th is doubled. And then it goes back to 5-3 here. F, A, D, A. Another first inversion triad where the 5th is doubled. Neighbor tone in the tenor, passing tone in the alto. E, A, F, D. I think these are accented non-chord tones because that's not a triad. Instead, we should be looking at a D, B, F natural D, which would make this a 2-6 chord. And 2-6, that would be B diminished. We would expect that to go to an E major triad, E, G sharp, E, C. But there's like suspensions and stuff being set up here. So this is really just this right here is a suspension. It'll eventually get turned into a, really what we're seeing here is just a big 5-7 chord where the bass leaps down an octave, and Bach is just doing contrapuntal cadential things here. And then we end perfect authentic cadence in the key of A minor. Now here's where I think there's some room for debate. I looked ahead a little bit, and I know definitely he modulates to the key of D, but whether we're going to analyze it as D major or D minor is up for debate. I'm going to just stick to my guns here and call it D minor, because we get some B flats going on and it looks more like melodic minor than major. But we do have a Picardy third here. We do modulate, we do cadence on a D major triad, because I think that's our common chord that gets us back to G. So analyzing ahead, like I said in a couple videos ago, I like to analyze back and forth for context. so that I can guide my previous analysis. In some cases it's very helpful. We have some passing tones there, but here we have B, G, D, B. That is a G major triad more specifically, so that would be a 4-6 uppercase. Usually that would be G minor if we were purely in D minor, but clearly Bach has some interesting mode mixture going on here. We have D, D, F, A. There's our one chord in D minor. Passing tone, B flat, E, G, D. Oh, that's interesting. That's also a chord tone. What do we want to call this? Is the E or the D? No, I think the E is our chord tone here. This is going to be a 2, fully diminished in third inversion with the D in the bass. And then we have C sharp in the bass, C sharp, E, E, A. That is again another first inversion triad where the fifth is doubled. And then we have D, A, E. That's a suspension, like a 9/8 suspension. That's just another D minor triad, which turns into, via suspensions, an A7 chord, or a 5/7, and then modulates to 1. We have these cross relations, F sharp and F natural occurring in close proximity to one another. Then we go from this D major triad to B, F sharp, and D. That is a 3 chord. And we would expect 3 usually to go to 6. 3, 6. Let's see. E, G, B, G. Root position triad. It is a 6 chord though. So yeah, 3 going to 6 via the rule of falling fifths or rising fourths, however you look at it. D, D, G, A. This is an accented non-chord tone. We're actually looking at this F sharp right here. That would make this a 5 chord. Then we have G, D, G. Oh, this is interesting. The alto is singing below the tenor here, so we have some voice crossing. Very low with a high melody, which is interesting. An interesting choice by Bach. This is just a 1 chord though. Passing tone in the bass. Passing tone up here in the soprano as well. E, E, G, B. And that could be 6, which then sort of turns into 4, but we're going to call it 6 because it happens for the longer part of the measure. And then we have B, D, F sharp, D. That's another 3 chord in root position. Passing tone. G, G, A, B. I think, or C right there. G, D, G, C. I think this is an accented non-chord tone, and this is just a 1 chord. Remember, 3 and 1 are a third apart, so they're kind of interchangeable because they share 2 notes. That's the whole thing about chords that are a third apart. But I think really he's just implying tonic in these first 2 beats. Then we have A or C, E, G, A. Let's see how we're going to do this. So we have A, C, G, B. A, C, G, B. I think this B is an accented non-chord tone. It's just C, G, C, A. That's just a 2/7. Yeah, right. And then we have D. Before I go back here, sorry, I have to analyze a little bit ahead. D, D, G. I think this is all just big 5/7 with passing tones and whatnot. Yeah, I think this is just a big 5/7 before we get a perfect authentic cadence in our home key, G major. But what are we going to call this beat right here? We have G, we have A, we have C, we have E. I think this is just, this whole thing is sort of just like a big 2/7. That's just a passing tone. But more specifically, this would be 2/6/5, and this would turn back into like 5/3, I guess. That would be the figured bass notation for it. And we don't need to reanalyze the 2, but I'll leave it there. It's not causing anyone any harm. And yeah, we just have like this big 5/7 going on at the end here. This whole measure is just passing tones and embellishment with these suspensions and whatnot, which has sort of been a theme for this chorale. But this chorale was definitely a doozy working through it. We have some exploration. I'm still not 100% as to whether or not we've modulated to C here. It doesn't sound like a modulation to C. These Fs sound very temporary. I really feel like it's more of a tonicization. But then again, everyone's going to have their own relationship with the music. And so long as you understand the fact that you're going to C here, that's really what matters, is what terminology we refer to what's going on here as. That's not super important, because ultimately we move from C into the realm of D in the next measure anyways, so that's really all that matters. But I think besides that, that's everything I wanted to talk about with this chorale. Interesting modulations. This is definitely like a heftier chorale content-wise, just more measures going on. And I'm looking forward to the next video. Thank you so much for watching the channel, and Happy New Year. Take care.